This is the Chasing Tomorrow podcast with Joe Gagnon. We bring you captivating conversations that will inspire all of us to go after our own version of a high-performance life. Well, welcome to the Chasing Tomorrow podcast. We have a great guest with us today, Dr. Alec Dragelin. As I continue to network in the world of health and wellness, and we start to get our message out there, we're getting more and more connected, not with just great athletes and amazing performers, but people who are here and available to help all of us find out what our health journey should be like. The support that we need, because I guess if you're an athlete and that's your job, then you're sort of born into this and you're coached. But the rest of us, we need support. We need smart people. We need encouragement. We need sort of the insights into what is it that's going to help us live that health span, this meaning of a healthier, longer life, not just a longer life. And so Alec and I have been going back and forth. And when I read this about him, he says he helps fitness lovers get out of pain, maximize performance, and pursue lifelong training. So Alec, with that, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Joe, thanks so much for having me. It is an honor.
This is great. I find that all of us are seeking more. And since you're a practitioner and you're operating in this way, I'd like to sort of actually understand, how in heaven's name did you end up here? Was this your plan from when you were a kid that you would be a practitioner helping people perform better? Tell us a little bit about your getting started story.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. My getting started story, I think, was more of a morphing, an evolution, if you will, over the years. I don't think I really had a game plan where I set out to want to be able to do this from the get-go. I always like to say that growing up, I was one of those kids who was like pretty good I was okay at a lot of things, but not
Yeah.
like great at any one thing, right? So I was just as much of a theater kid as I was an athlete. I was just as much of a literature and English lover as I was a science geek. And so I had kind of just a hand in a lot of different pots and was influenced by a lot of different areas and disciplines and that sort of thing. And as a result, I don't think I really had one thing where from the get-go that I really wanted to focus in. And so I came from a school where really you had sort of like four options, right, of career choices, if you will. And four options were you went to college and you either became an investment banker, a lawyer, a physician, or you worked for the government, right? Like those were sort of like you did something in politics, right? You had like these four career paths in front of you. And honestly, like three out of the four of those did not sound appealing to me whatsoever. So I decided that I was like, well, I guess I'm going to try and be a physician of some kind. Got to college, went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, go Heels. So pretty stoked about that. But got there and I really just didn't jive with just like the trajectory that the traditional pre-med course was. It felt so cutthroat and it felt so stale in a lot of ways. And as I started to think about what I wanted to do, I considered a career in the military for a while and I looked at a lot of different things. But ultimately, I had this realization that, okay, I want to help people. I want to work with people. And I'm fascinated by the human body. But I honestly have no desire to go to medical school whatsoever. And so then thinking through different options, I toyed around with the idea of going to physical therapy school, looked at chiropractic as well, and ultimately decided on going to chiropractic school for a number of different reasons. And as I kind of got into that career and got into my schooling, sorry, you might hear my dog in the background.
No problem.
This is a dog friendly house here.
Yeah.
As I started getting into that, I really started becoming influenced by the rehab professionals and the exercise focused practitioners in my field, and recognizing and realizing that exercise was one of the most powerful, potent drugs available to us as humans in terms of improving our lifespan and our health span, things that obviously you're very passionate about as well. It kind of became a no-brainer. I started to realize that my love for fitness and my love for exercise actually started to blend into this thing that I could do to help people. Like that was pretty cool to me. And so now all of a sudden I, for the first time in my life, realized that okay, all of these things, all of these backgrounds all these influences that I've had on my life kind of have been leading to this moment of I consider myself, or I am by trade and by licensure, a chiropractor, but I consider myself more of an exercise physician than anything else. And very much so, my practice and the focus that I have in helping people is gearing them towards lifelong sustainable training that allows them to not only feel the best, but live the best possible life that they can.
Yes, that's fascinating. Of course, each of us have these always very unique journeys, and something triggers in us, and then somewhat gets self-reinforcing, right? You see something, you do it, you find a return. And I do think that sometimes, if you're a listener of the podcast, there's a little bit of this is that's those other people who can do that. That's not me. I'm just a regular person sitting on the couch. What do I know about any of this? And so, as you think about people trying to get them on this trajectory, this path towards exercise as both medicine as well as inspiration for what's possible, because I think all of us can do way more than we think we can. How do you think about that early phase as you start to try and rebuild this system that's been running in one way? Now you're trying to push it another way.
No, I love that question because this is something that I talk to both my patients and my clients about a lot. In my world, a lot of what this looks like is either this is an individual who is an athlete, right? Who cares about their health, they care about their fitness, but now they've had an injury that sidelined them. And sometimes we catch these things early when we're fortunate. They say, hey, they get that injury and they come in for care early, and that recovery journey is expedited because we catch it soon. But there are other times, Joe, where we see somebody come in and it's like they've been dealing with this thing for years, right? And they've just put it off, or even worse, you have the instance where, let's say you have somebody that hurts their back, right? And they hurt their back deadlifting, for example. And now they say, well, I'm not going to deadlift anymore because I hurt my back deadlifting. And so they take away that layer of their life, and now their life is smaller. And now they live in these new confines. Well, I can do everything, but I just can't deadlift, right? And so then something happens and they hurt their back doing something else, right? Maybe it was lifting a couch up or something like that, moving a piece of furniture. And now it's okay, well, now I can do everything in my life, but I am not going to deadlift and I'm not going to move any furniture, right? And now over time their life gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and they come in and they have a life that's so small, and it's been made so small because of this injury. And in those cases, Joe, now we have a much bigger road, a much bigger journey in front of us, right? And so what this typically looks like is we then have to redefine and say, okay, well, what do we actually want? What do you actually want from your life? Like if we could suspend disbelief for a second, and we could say, hey, if you got your life back, what would that look like, right? And we can dream as big as possible. And and so from there we then say, okay, well, where are you at now? And where is that thing? We actually have to build a plan backward until we reach where you are now. And so a lot of what it looks like in this starting phase is we have to take that end goal in mind first and build the plan backward until we get to where we are now. And then that allows us to then fill in the gaps in between. I think all too often we get stuck in thinking about, a lot of times patients at least get stuck in thinking about where they are right now, and where they want to get to. And that leap seems so big. It seems so impossible to get there. But if we actually reverse that and we start with the end goal in mind and we build things backward, it becomes much more attainable.
So many thoughts around that. The idea if you gave someone 10 years to accomplish a goal, they'd probably say, yeah, that's probably possible. Like if you wanted me to run 3 miles within 10 years or lift 100 pounds, yeah, I think I could do that. And so this idea that often what gets in the way is we try and rush our way to something.
100%.
What the outcome is, to your point, then I can get myself there. But
Mhm.
also the idea that the plan needs to go at the proper slope so that the system adjusts. Our bodies do adjust well when the load isn't too high or the load isn't too low. So, what kind of advice do you have for people to try and figure out that, like, how much load can I take? How many days a week can I exercise? How much should I do? And what kind of time horizon do I give myself
Sure,
there?
sure. No, I think that's a great question. what you said about the time horizon is probably the most important thing to grasp first and foremost, especially when coming back from an injury, right? So if time is on our side and we have very low expectations for how long something is going to take to recover from, almost invariably we can be successful in our outcomes, right? When we try to rush the calendar or when the clock is working against us, that things get a little hairier. So this is a classic example of this is an athlete who's in season, right? Hey, if you get hurt and you're at the beginning of season and we're just trying to get you back for playoffs and we have 3 months to do that, okay, well then that's pretty doable. If playoffs are starting in 2 weeks and you come in with this injury, depending on what the injury is, well, time's not really on our side. That calendar is working against us, right? And so what we say in sports medicine is that sports medical care is subpar medical care, right? Sports medicine is subpar medical care. And what that means is we're trying to weigh out what the medical decision making is with the sport performance decision making. And we're trying to blend those two things together. But the problem is they're at odds with one another. And so we have to make the decision. And this is the decision that is made both with the athlete and their family and what their goals are versus our opinions as well. And I come from a interesting perspective in that not only do I have the physician perspective side of things, but also the performance coach side of things as well. And so I oftentimes will interchange hats and I'll say, okay, here's my physician hat and here's what I'm saying. Here's my sport performance coach hat. Here's what I'm saying. Now, based on that information, let's make a decision together in terms of what's best for you, right? So that's like I think the first thing is to understand that the timeline of things is so paramount depending on what we're working with, right? But if you're one of those people who is trying to get back into things, what is really fun about my job is that this is where you take the science and you kind of step away from the science and you kind of go into the art a little bit. And it's based on everyone's personal background, what their exercise history is like through the rest of their life, what their recent exercise history is like. If you have somebody who's never done anything before and they come and they say, Joe, I want to run a marathon this year. And it's, well, honey, we got a long way to go because you ain't ever walked a 5K before, right? And we're going to run a marathon this year. It's okay. Well, let's start with some walking first, right? But if it's, hey, I am a seasoned runner and I just had this bone stress injury and I've been in a boot for 12 weeks and now I'm trying to get back to running a marathon later on this year. Okay, well now the rules for us can change a little bit because you have this exercise history in your body. You're coming off of an injury. So we have to just work within the rules of the injury, get you back, and you're going to be fine, right? And so what is really fun is that no single person that walks into my clinic is the same as the person before. They're all different, and we have to take
Yeah.
into consideration all of their things, their nutrition, what's their home life stress like, how much sleep are they getting, is it good quality sleep, right? Again, what their exercise history is, all those things play a part in the decision making of building that plan backward to from where they want to get to back to where they are right now.
Yeah, I like that. I've been using this analogy lately that early in our work career, people tell us we should invest in an IRA or a 4, invest in our future. Because by the time you retire, you would like to have saved up enough money so that you could live the life you want. And then you start with very little, maybe $20 a month. And maybe as you start to make a little more money, you put $100 a month. And maybe there's some years you might get a little extra and you put in $500 one month. And 30 years later, hey, look at this compounding interest, this continued focus on building my future financial well-being really worked out for me. And I think that this journey towards lifelong health and wellness is not that dissimilar. As we
Mm,
build this foundation, we can put more on, right? So yeah, maybe I can just walk around the block one day and one day I could run a marathon, or maybe one day I could deadlift 100 pounds and I can't even move a bar today. And I think that's one of the interesting parts of this lifelong fitness is getting in our heads this idea that we're investing in our future now. And it doesn't have to be a lot now to be a lot later. How do you feel about that?
I couldn't agree more. I tweeted something a while ago. I don't tweet very much, but I try to sometimes because I like have these thoughts. It's mostly for me more than anyone else, right? It's I just think my Twitter is just like my I had this thought in the shower. I'm going to tweet it, but I said something that I think fits along with this, which is saying that you don't have time to invest in your fitness right now is a lot like saying you don't have enough money to follow a budget. And because the irony is that the only thing that's going to buy you more time in this world is your health and your fitness. The only thing that's going to allow you to have the financial freedom to do the things later that you want to be able to do is through having a healthy financial habit through following a budget, right? And so if you say that, hey, I don't have enough time to invest in my health right now because life is so crazy, it's so busy, like I'm going to do that once things calm down. It's a trap. It's a fallacy, right? Because the reality is like this, you probably know this better than I do because I don't know if there's listeners, but I think I'm a few years younger than you, Joe. But the reality is the only thing that actually is going to buy us and earn us more time on this earth, God willing, is through investing in our health. And so it's a fallacy that things will someday slow down or that it will someday be the right time to start. And the reality is the right time to start was yesterday, right? You said it yourself, compounding interest, right, is a very powerful thing. The right time to start investing and taking advantage of compound interest is not today. It actually was yesterday. It is very, very that analogy holds true so well. I use it all the time with my patients. And thankfully, a lot of my patients understand that now. I think the tide is turning, but you still will have individuals that come in and come see you for knee pain or shoulder pain or something like that. And it's Susan, I get it. Your shoulder hurts, but like this is not a shoulder issue right now. This is the fact, like we have so many bigger issues. Like this shoulder thing is four things down the line, right? Like let's talk about the fact that we haven't exercised in 4 years, or you're on the brink of having type 2 diabetes or what have you, right? Or like you're when you walk up to the wall, the first thing that hits is your belly and not your nose, right? Like
Yep.
those are all of those factors are so much bigger issues than the fact, like I get it, your shoulder hurts and we're going to address that. But if we just address this, we are missing out so much on the things that are really going to make a difference in your life. And so I think the tides are turning though, Joe. I will say I am encouraged by what I see. I think there are more people who are, I feel like the extremes are getting more extreme. You have like the healthy who are getting or are trying to get healthier, and you have the unhealthy who are unfortunately sliding away the other
Yeah.
direction.
Just to close on the other point, they would say that the best day to invest is either 20 years ago or today. And so if you didn't start 20 years ago, then just start today. And the same with our health. This combination, though, the other part, right? So there's a lot of things, and you started off by saying what are the outcomes that you want. I think that might be a little bit, the language might confuse people. What do you mean by outcome, Joe or
Sure.
Alec? Well, maybe one of them is I want to play pickleball because why do I want to play pickleball? It's fun, but I want to hang out with my friends. What if we like Peter Attia's message, right? He wants to do this sort of centenarian Olympics. So when I'm 80 years old, I want to be able to sit on the ground and hang out with my grandchildren. There are a lot of these very basic sort of ideas that all of us sort of aspire towards, right? That we would want to be able to achieve. And so, but there is something in the way of that, which is our health. And so if those are the things, then what should I be doing today? And this is where I think you and then even JC and talking to others about this is like having support, not just me watching a YouTube video, but using people to help us, right? If someone is really good or come visit you in your practice or anything like that. Hey guys, Joe Gagnon, host of the Chasing Tomorrow podcast, and this episode is brought to you by OneUp Health. OneUp Health is a modern cloud data and interoperability platform that makes it easy to acquire, store, and share data between payers, providers, and patients. I hope you enjoy the episode. Are you seeing more people come in to say, hey, I want some help? Are you starting to see like people you never would have seen before?
For sure. No, I'm seeing a lot of really fun things from that same fun for me, right? As
Yeah.
somebody who's about this, oh, this is so great. Like you're getting ahead of things, right? And this is I am starting to see this happen more and more is that people will come in and they'll say, "Hey, I've been injured before. I'm feeling really good right now, by the way, right? I don't have any issues. Here's what I've previously dealt with, but I've been pretty good at managing those. But I've just gotten to a point where I want to make sure that I can continue to train and I can continue to do the things that I want to do. And I want to get ahead of anything that might be underneath the surface or might be lingering there. And I want to just make sure that I'm optimizing everything as much as possible. And I'll tell you what, Joe, those visits and clients are so much fun because the reality is I love working and helping with people get out of their injury, but it can be emotionally challenging sometimes for both the patient and the provider, in that like you're walking alongside them through this journey, and there's ups and downs, and sometimes they have really good days and sometimes they
Yeah.
have not great days, and you're helping them through this, and it's incredibly rewarding. But there is something also that's nice when you see somebody who's kind of, they've already moved past that. They're in this phase, and things are just going really well. And
Yeah.
you get to celebrate that with them, and now help them really optimize what I would consider are the big three, which are their training, both from a cardiovascular and a strength training. Those are the two big areas where I focus in with my patients, is the cardiovascular component, which typically our runners and our triathletes, they've kind of already dialed that in pretty well. They're the cardio junkies. But then there's the strength training component as well, which as sometimes is leaving much to be desired in the area of runners and triathletes. So educating them and teaching them on how to do that appropriately, how to make sure that they can incorporate strength training into their routines, but not negatively affect their performance on the road or on the trails, is really important. But then also dialing in their nutrition and their sleep as well. And so what's their nutrition, what's their recovery like, making sure that those two things are also on point. And I'm seeing more and more people who really resonate with that message. They recognize that they've got the thing in their fitness life that they love and they really don't need much help with, right? Like they've got it under control. Whether it's they're a runner or they're a weightlifter or whatever it is, like they have their thing but
Yeah.
they see the importance and the value of maybe those other things that they're not as good with. My weightlifters, a lot of times they either hate cardio or they hate mobility work. So we need to work on one of those two
Yeah.
things, right? And so they see it, but they hate working on it. They hate doing it, but they know it's a weakness and they need that help they need that accountability really to work on those areas. And that's so much fun, man. It's so much fun to be able to go through those things and encourage them in that way, and just have a really positive experience. And then also helping them along in the nutrition and the recovery side of things as well. And when I say recovery, I mean I don't really dabble much in all of the extras, if you will, the cold plunges and saunas and red lights and all of that stuff. I think that's great. Like if you like that and you want to do it, like no harm, no foul, as long as it's on a foundation of you're already doing the most important things first, right? If you're sleeping like crap and you're eating like crap and you're training like crap, and then you're dropping a few grand a month on all of these recovery solutions, you're putting lipstick on a pig.
Point. Yeah.
Missing the point. Yeah.
What's interesting as you were talking, I was listening and thinking about when we're children, we love to play, right? And we're very functional. We ride our bike, we run around the backyard, we jump and do stuff, and then we sort of work our way out of that a little bit as we go along in life. But all of us can remember the joy of that. It's reconnecting with the joy of these activities, not the pain. Yeah, there's a few people who like to visit the pain cave, Alec, as we would say, want to really go hard. But that isn't what we're talking about, right? It's like the joy of movement, the joy of activity, the joy of sort of feeling youthful and excited about what's going on. And I think that's part of what I think we all have to try and remind ourselves that's where we're getting towards. And I'm not a big pickleball player, but I see people staying out there 3, 4, 5 hours just because they're hanging out with their friends and they're just having a good time, right? We should appreciate that sport is probably done more for community than almost anything else. But a lot of this is about getting that back. Do you feel like you can see that, right? Someone starts to feel better and then all of a sudden everything lifts off of them and they're excited again.
Oh, isn't that so true? It is so, so true to be able to see that. Like I say that there's this inflection point typically of what I call the expectation violation. And typically in the rehab world, the expectation violation is that point that you're talking about, which is typically they'll there's one kind of activity that in their mind they say they hang some kind of importance to one way or the other, but then they also put this weight on it of attaching whatever pain or injury that they have to that activity as well. So it might be playing pickleball, it might be lifting, it might be like going to the gym with their friends, or going on a run with their run club or whatever. And they expect, because their previous experiences have taught them, hey, when you do this thing, you're going to be in pain afterward, or you're going to have pain during it, right? And they go do it for the first time. And for the first time in however long it's been, they have no pain. And they have that expectation violation. They expected there to be something negative there, and it turned into a positive experience. And that moment right there is the single most powerful moment of the entire rehab process. Everything that I do is geared toward getting them as quickly as possible and as effectively as possible to that expectation violation, because it's the very first hit of that drug that then gets them hooked again. And it's once they have a taste of that, the tides in their mind start to turn. And now all of a sudden we can start to rewire what was this negative experience into now a positive one, right? And it's such a powerful thing. And like you said, physical activity and exercise is a core part of the human experience, and I believe is a central part of human community. I think that really, but there are essentially, I think, two. I really think that there are probably like three big tenets of human community that are incredibly valuable. I think it's communion around a table, right? So it's
Hmm.
sharing a meal
Yep.
together. I think it's sharing some kind of corporate spiritual experience, whatever that might look like for you. And I think it's movement, it's activity, right? It's that's going all the way back to hunting and gathering. That
Yeah.
goes back to how sports and competition have been played for thousands and thousands of years, to the fact that I hung out with my buddies this weekend and watched basketball, right? Like
Right.
it's that
Hmm.
we weren't doing activity, we were watching activity. It's human activity, human movement, exercise is a core part of what it means to be a human. When we don't have that in our lives, eventually it's robbing us of that joy that we otherwise
Yeah.
could have.
Those pillars, yeah, three pillars. I like that. The nutrition was the first pillar, both what I eat and who I eat it with, and enjoying that. That second pillar of some sort of life journey around our personal accomplishments. We call that work sometimes. And then the third is this movement, exercise, activity. That is a pretty complete person. There's a lot that happens, and there's a strong foundation of those three pillars. The interesting part, all of them, there's this theme of this play on words that people work around, which is this idea that discipline creates freedom. Everyone thinks discipline constricts freedom. Well, I have to do that. Actually, no, it's this enabler of a new set of capabilities. The discipline to save that allows you to go on vacation. The discipline to do my training so that I can actually stay out on the pickleball court for a couple hours or hang out in the gym. The disciplines around getting better at work one day is that you could be a coach to someone and a mentor, and these all these reward systems that come back from that, right? And if we live that sort of more rigorous life, it opens up so much for us and just gives this beautiful opportunity that we all should seize, right?
Totally. Yeah, I use the analogy of a fishbowl a lot, right? Where it's if you think about like a goldfish inside of a fishbowl, you can think about these disciplines as the bowl, right? And you can view it as one of two ways: is either that bowl is restrictive to the fish, it's keeping the fish trapped and contained, right, in this small area, right? But the fish is a whole lot better, Joe, being inside that fishbowl than if all of a sudden you could do like a snap and that fishbowl would disappear, and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden water falls on the floor and the fish is flopping and flailing, right? And it's gasping for breath. That fishbowl now all of a sudden becomes a life giver to that fish, right? And what's amazing, I guess where this analogy kind of breaks down, is that the longer that we spend in that fishbowl, right? Our fishbowl starts to grow over time, right? And in the world of fitness, it's kind of one of those things where, hey, the longer you've been in this journey of fitness, right, you kind of actually start to earn and buy yourself more freedom, more leeway, right? We know this in the law of thermodynamics too, in terms of weight loss and dieting, right? Is that, hey, the more skeletal muscle mass that you have, right, the more caloric burn
Mm.
you're going to have during the day, right? Which actually kind of buys you some freedom where it's, hey, if you want to hang out with your buddies and you want to have a few beers and some nachos, not saying that I've done that before, but you can kind of actually like earn your right to do that because
Yeah.
it's not going to really affect or change your body a whole lot because you've been literally exercising for the last 20 years, right?
Mm.
And again, it's this long game, it's this long horizon. But if, hey, we haven't done that and we're on this weight loss journey or whatever it might be, you have these particular fitness goals, your fishbowl might be a little bit smaller. Those rules might be a little bit more restrictive for you given the goals that you have for yourself. And that's the reality is like those more restrictive goals are eventually going to buy you that freedom that you're looking for. But it's the delayed gratification that is so counterintuitive. I'm not saying this because I'm a master at this by any means, but it's that delayed gratification that is so counterintuitive to, I think, our entire being as humans that makes this a lifelong uphill battle where it's tough. It's really, really hard to do this stuff. It's hard to have that discipline. And so that's where that support group comes in, right? That's where having either
Mhm.
mentors or people to walk alongside you with it, or a supportive community or supportive home life, right? All of those things become massively important because let's be honest, we are bent to wanting to have the here and now and to prioritize that over what the big picture is going to be.
Yeah, I think the interesting part, of course, we always get deep into sort of the neuromodulators of dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin and other elements, cortisol. There are pieces of the way our system works that drive our behavior a lot. But we can wire into that and get the benefit from the way that it works by setting mini goals.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be a big goal, it's just a mini goal. That's all you need. And then our system likes that. Oh, look at that. I achieved that mini goal. Or community. Community is so powerful because it's why we survived throughout all these years, was because we banded together. When we don't have community, it is more effort. And so I think sometimes having that balanced scorecard for our lives is really important. And then I've started creating my own report card
Hmm.
of what have I done? What have I accomplished? And it's only for my own benefit. Like when you get your report card in school, no one else really matters. It's about you and how you performed. And we want to perform at the best that the system would allow for. But the more that we sort of write it down, think about it, act it out in the community, give ourselves the time to achieve, the higher the probability that this does become sort of integral to who we are and how we live. And I think that having people like you who continue to remind people that you got, imagine if you had 50 years, all the things you wanted to, but sounds like a rough time. What's the rush?
I know. Yeah, those mini goals I think are incredibly important. I was reflecting on so much as you were saying that, just in terms of I think my own fitness journey, my own health journey, and how things have kind of like laid out as in terms of getting that next dopamine hit. I think I was fortunate in just how my cards fell, where I like kind of was always craving, okay, what's going to be that next thing that I can do, right? That I can work toward, that I can try to achieve. And something to be said, Joe, where achievements are not everything, right? They're not everything, but they sure are a great way to add and enhance life, to work towards things. And as long as I think we maintain the headspace and the emotional state that our achievements are not where we get our value from, which is something that I'm definitely guilty of. I have to remember that my worth is not in my achievements, and that my worth is placed in something higher than that, right? Because ultimately, like you said, it's like every time you get an achievement, we're just looking for what the next thing is, right? Like I
Yeah.
think about my ultra marathon journey, and I started off. I was with one of my best buddies, and we were at this Mexican restaurant down in West Palm Beach, and had a few margaritas, and we decided to sign up for a marathon together. And we were looking at which one we were going to go. We were searching on the internet for a fun marathon, and a couple margaritas later, we signed up for a 50 miler. Uh,
Oh,
We went
Wow.
in thinking we were going to sign up for a marathon. We ended up signing up for a 50 miler together. We ran that one. And then that 50 miler then turned into the next race we did was 100K. And then the next race I did after that was 110K. And the next one I'm going to do is a 100 miler. Right. And so you're always
Hmm.
looking for that next, what's the next biggest thing? What's the next thing that I can check off the list? And
Building a foundation that allows you to go explore that and to see what you find along the way. It doesn't
exactly.
have to be the journey. It could be that someone just, and running is easy to talk about. And it could be, I did 3 5Ks a week for a couple of years, and that's a great accomplishment. I think that almost having that child awe of what's possible, not knowing. And so then it's what the explorer in us wants to go find. We
Mhm.
don't have the same exploration that we had in the era of, I don't know, early days of America or the Lewis and Clark expedition. So we like it still. It's still in our system. And so this is one way to go find that. Now, I think the other thing that is really powerful is now you would be capable of helping other people go on that journey. So it puts us in a great place if indeed one of the greatest rewards we can get is helping other people. Like, well, I have experience with that. Let me tell you what it's like. Let me tell you about a training plan. Let me go out and run with you, pace you, support you. And it's always interesting, Alec, if you say I'm going to help someone, why do you want to do that? Because I just want to help you. Imagine if we did that more often,
Right.
what the world would be like.
Yeah.
I think that as you, though, dig in, what's been the most surprising part of that journey from probably something sounding pretty improbable, 50 miler, 60, for everyone, 100K, 62 miles, now on the way to 100. What have you been finding about yourself along that journey?
That's such a great question. Oh man, I think the biggest thing is we've sort of alluded to this, but I felt it just to be so true. I think one is that a lot of people think they're, oh my gosh, how could you? I can't even fathom driving 68 miles. Like, I don't even want to drive that way, drive that far. Like, I can't even imagine running that far.
Yep.
And the reality is, honestly, the race part, I mean, the race part is hard, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's be honest, like, no matter how you slice it or who you are, there's not a single person who finishes an ultra marathon and was like, that was pretty easy. Like,
No.
literally, that doesn't ever happen, right? So that is hard. It's challenging. But what people don't understand oftentimes is that's not really the hard part. The hard part is, oh, it's Saturday in the fall, and my college teams playing football, right? All my family, my friends are all hanging out watching this thing, or they did something on Friday night, but I went to bed at 8 a.m. because I'm waking up at 4 so I can
Yeah.
go run in the woods for 7 hours,
Yeah.
right? And you do that week after week after week. And it's, oh, I've just worked a full day. And now it's a Thursday and I have a 16 miler to do today for like
Yeah.
my like mid distance midweek run, right? It's things, it's that, and it's the day after day after day, and it's showing up day after day after.
Mm.
And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is the power of showing up,
Yeah.
right? And Joe, I'll tell you, I know we've talked a little bit about some of the fitness things that I've done, and honestly, I'm really not that good of an athlete. I I was not a starter in high school. Like, I didn't do anything noted, like anything noteworthy in
Hmm.
my athletic career. I was not a college athlete, right? Like, I started lifting weights in college when I was a sophomore. Like, nothing super crazy. But what I've recognized, and when I look around, what I've realized has made all the difference has been just showing up, consistency of showing up day after day. And turns out when you compound just literally walking into a gym or putting on your shoes, and you do that every single day over the course of 2 decades, it adds up and makes a difference, right? And there's no, and
Totally right.
the unfortunate or the fortunate thing, depending on how you look at it, is that there's no shortcut to it. You know,
No.
you literally you can't hack it, you can't biohack it, you can't shortcut it, you can't do any of those things. There's no pill that you can take. It's literally just showing up, and you can either choose to view that and think of that as a very like a very like disempowering thing, or you can view it the other way and say, no, this is 100% in like this, you are in the driver's seat of this, because literally all you have to do is show up. And if you
Yeah.
just stack enough days of showing up on top of one another, change happens, and
Very
you can
powerful.
accomplish some amazing things.
There's two parts of that. First, I agree totally. And actually, what's really interesting is that the more you show up, the more you build a foundation and then an ability to do something else that you might not have otherwise ever chosen to do because you now have this confidence from having shown up. Hey, I could take on that new challenge. I could take on that new job. I can go to a new place because you now have built this resiliency into your system. The other side of it, I've been blogging for a long time, and everyone says, "What's your favorite blog?" And that's impossible across 4,000 of them. But the one in the top 10 is this idea of the rusty swing set. So a lot of listeners probably have kids at some point in their life, and the kids are on the swing set every day, and that thing works beautifully. And then they age out of it, and then one day you walk into your backyard 3 years later, and the thing is in a shambles, and it just was sitting there. What happened? Well, it
Yeah.
didn't get used.
Mm.
And it's the same thing about the body. This system we have is it wants to move. It's what it's built for. And this entire design of it is movement. When we talk about exercise, I think we sometimes miss the point that this isn't sort of like a superfluous idea. Gyms just happen to be a place. But movement, which is what the word you used right in the beginning, is the most important thing we can do. And that swing set would have lasted another 20 years if you used it every day in ways that you would never imagine, right? And the same with all of our bodies. If we want to be here till 90 in a healthy way, then it's got to be used. And that's what you found is through this ultra marathoning is just, wow, going farther than I ever thought I could here.
Yeah.
Pretty resilient.
Yeah,
Keep doing
absolutely.
it, right?
Yeah, and the goal for everyone's goal doesn't have to be, I don't care if you run an ultra marathon or not. Like
No, of course not.
literally, and I would honestly, unless you really want to do it, I would say don't do it. Like
Don't
there's
do
no
it.
real reason to. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing, that's a personal goal that I've set for myself because it's something that I ended up finding that I
Yeah,
loved and I loved the challenge of it and that sort of thing. Some people have no desire to do that, and that's fine.
absolutely.
Some people will say to me, I just really hate running and I just don't want to,
Yeah,
I just
I
don't
know.
like running.
I
And
hear
I'm
that
like,
all the
then
time.
don't run.
Don't run.
It's fine. Do anything else. Like
Yeah,
just pick something else and do that instead, then that's fine. But we still have to keep in mind what are some of the things that the tenets and the pillars, and we want to hit our strength training, we want to hit our aerobic capacity training because we know that those things are going to be good for us long term, right? But if you hate a particular thing, then just don't do that thing. Enjoy the things that you do, right?
yeah.
And I don't even
Will do.
remember where I was
But
going with
yeah,
that.
but we're in charge, right? I think we're in charge of this mission that we're on. And you're there to encourage people through both helping them through injury, then positioning them for movement, and then supporting them on the continued journey through those cycles. The choices, you're right, they sort of are irrelevant in a way. The consistency is the key.
Consistency is the key, right? And it's if we're wanting to, if our goal is to live the longest and the happiest life that we can, then I think that it would be hard pressed to do that without incorporating some form of movement and exercise habit throughout your life, right? And it has to become, in order for it to be sustainable, it has to become an identity. There has to be an identity shift there. It has to become part of one's identity in order for that to be something sustainable. Otherwise, it's going to turn, it will never turn from a thing that you have to do into a thing that you get to do.
Yeah.
Right. And for me at this point in my life, I was having a conversation with a friend about this a few days ago. And we were just talking about, I'm actually curious to hear your thoughts on this. And we were saying, hey, I've been exercising for so long that days that I miss exercise are really crappy days. If I don't get a chance to go to the gym, I don't get a chance to train, whatever it is, those are my worst days of the week compared to the days that I do get to train. And in a weird way, it kind of like takes discipline for me to schedule rest days into my week because I hate them. I hate rest days. I would rather be a training day than a rest day. And that's just because I've been doing it for so long. So my thought to you, this is kind of an interesting thought experiment here. Do you feel like that for you and I who've been exercising and training for so long, is it discipline that we still show up to the gym? Is it discipline
Mm.
that we still show up to our training? Or have we graduated out of a phase
Mhm.
where we can't claim to be more disciplined than somebody else because it's literally something that we desire and we crave? I don't know. That was an interesting
Yeah.
question my friend brought up to me this weekend, and I don't know. I'm curious to hear your
Yeah,
thoughts.
well, maybe there's some subtlety in the word and how we use it, but I do actually think that the system at rest is still the system that we are part of, right? I mean, the homeostasis, the body at rest. Why are we comfortable sitting on the couch watching Netflix? Because 10,000 years ago, we had to sit in the cave waiting for the hunt to happen. And so we had to get used to that. And so I don't think we have dispatched that out of our lives. Otherwise, everyone would be moving all the time. So I do think actually movement, while we have sort of indoctrinate ourselves into that practice, I think we're still working to make that happen. But we've created some familiarity, just like brushing our teeth, just like eating. They are still disciplines, even though they happen almost autonomically. I think the other part of it for me is that this idea of a day of rest. I like the idea of sort of the active recovery model, which is that movement still matters. It just doesn't have to be of intensity to give us the sort of satisfaction and the consistency of a body that could be resilient, because I think that that's what happens. I'm a trail runner too, and I've fallen a lot of times and I've never broken a bone, and sort of that seems odd, but I think there's resiliency in the system because this system has kept working all the time. And so I think that's the same with every car that you get tuned and every machine that we buy. They are made to last a long time as long as they're used and they're taken care of. Now, that means sleep matters, nutrition matters, community matters, mindset matters. It is the totality of all of that that comes together that allows for the movement part to feel more natural and not as much of a struggle. If none of those things are in alignment, then yes, the movement is a big struggle because we're fighting all that other elements of what makes us a sort of a good, healthy person.
Totally.
So, yeah, I think we are still disciplined. The other thing you could always do if you really want to figure out if you're disciplined or not is just up the game and see once you up the game how hard it is. And oh, okay. I
Yeah.
don't know. I did this 110,000 push-ups last year and I decided I should go for 150,000 this year. And then I started realizing that if I had a day off because I was doing an ultra marathon, I'd actually have to do more. And oh my God, you go from 300 to 500 and now you feel it. Now you're back into, you better pull on that discipline card because you had made it a little bit easy.
Right. You move the
Yeah,
goalpost, right? You got to move the goalpost a little bit.
when you do that, then you find out that actually it wasn't just autonomic. It's actually still
Mm.
this very active process that you are just winning the battle just a little easier.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that. I appreciate
So,
it.
so the good thing you highlighted is I have a few years on you. I still think like I'm 40 years old, which is good. But so now you have like a foundation that you've built here. And when I named this podcast Chasing Tomorrow, it came from this idea of I sort of like to lean into the future. They say you only live in today, but I was trying to imagine a future. And so now that you have this foundation, you have success personally in your own activities, you have success in the business, you're making an impact. How do you want to see this evolve? What is Alex chasing tomorrow? What do you want to see happen over the next few years?
And I appreciate that question because I think about it a lot. And I think in terms of my impact on the world, one of the things that I am passionate about is obviously I work in the healthcare space, and I had just last week it was I think one of those weeks where you get those themes that keep popping up over and over, and the theme was I had multiple patients who were just they were just frustrated with the medical system and some experiences that they
Mm.
had at different doctors' offices, et cetera. One patient was waited for 2 hours in the waiting room. The doctor was 2 hours behind schedule. I was trying to call a physician to co-manage and to talk through some case details with one of their patients that I was treating, and I had to called the office 4 times, talked to 4 different people, couldn't get a hold of the physician, still never heard back. Things like that, and it was just all these little things just kept popping up, and it did kind of bother me in it, and it made me realize that one of the things I am really passionate about is shifting the tide of the medical industry to something where the where we refocus on providing a good and a pleasant experience for the patient again. There are very few people I think who really enjoy going to the doctor, regardless of who it is, right?
Mhm.
And not saying that always has to be a great, exciting thing to do, but if we could change the patient experience to be something where the patient as the customer, if you will,
Yeah.
is thrilled with their experience because they're treated like a human, because the doctor actually listens to them and actually cares about the things that they care about. They don't feel like they're being brushed off. They don't feel like they're being told they're crazy or it's all in their head. They're not being told that, hey, the solution to the fact that you have knee pain when you're running is you need to rest. Hey, just back off your miles, just do less, don't exercise
Yeah.
quite, you're going too hard, right? Like, that's, if that's the solution that they're giving you, you're not being heard, because that's not the goals that you have for yourself. And so it's all of those things where I want my company, my business, to be a driving force in changing the tide of the medical industry back to something that actually puts the patient first, that prioritizes and values and recognizes that the key tenets to health that we've talked about, nutrition, exercise, good community, that those three things are more important than any pharmaceutical that can be out there, and will make a larger impact on your health than any pill that you can take or any other procedure that you could have done. And so from a big picture standpoint, is I want to be a force that helps push that narrative forward, that helps bring that back to the forefront again, that where we see a shift in, Joe, could we see a shift in the statistics in the United States? Could we see a shift in that we see the trends of chronic disease, of obesity, diabetes, of heart disease, of all of these major issues that are facing our country? What would it take to start to swing the pendulum the other way again? And what it takes a whole lot more people than me, right? It takes an army. It takes what you're doing here with this podcast to inspire people and to help get the word out about more practitioners and more coaches and more support groups and all the things that can help the public take back control of their lives. But it takes an army, man. It takes a village. And
Yeah.
so that's one of the things that I'm passionate about. And let's be real, I'm hoping I'm in this for the long game. I'm hoping that I'll be here doing this from now as well, and that things may have changed and shifted at that point. And as the world changes and as the world shifts, I guarantee you that my approach and the things that I try to do for people will shift and change as well. But until then, man, we're gonna focus on doing everything that we can to make this world a healthier and happier place.
I
That's the
love
goal.
that. Love that. And so you're on Instagram. Tell people how they could follow you.
Yes, I'm on Instagram at doctor, that's dr.alec, ALEC, Draglin, Dragelin. And that's where I'm posting most of my content right now. Is in the exercise management, is in the injury recovery space, and really just trying to provide as much education and content there as I can for people. I'm pretty new to the socials game, so it's growing, but expect to see a whole lot more there in the future for sure.
Well, Alec, keep doing it. We'll keep talking. We're going to build this community and we can have some fun doing it and make an impact. And everyone listening will get a benefit from just one extra step. So
I
thanks
love
again
it.
for being on.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it, Joe.